Aloha Jivas. Welcome to another reading of Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. We are on chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, starting with text 14. And Krishna is speaking and laying down some heavy truths. Matra sparshastu kaunteya shitoshna sukha dukkha daha agamma payino nityastam stitikshashva bharata. O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course, are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O scion of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. Purport. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January, February. It is very cold at that time, but in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas, and although one has to fight with some friend or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge, because by knowledge and devotion only can one liberate himself from the clutches of Maya, or illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as a Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharat signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have a great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Text 15. Yam hi na vyata yantyate purusham purusharshabha samadukha sukham dhiram somritavyaya kalpate. O best among men, Arjuna, the person who is not disturbed by happiness and distress and is steady in both is certainly eligible for liberation. Purport. Anyone who is steady in his determination for the advanced stage of spiritual realization and can equally tolerate the onslaughts of distress and happiness is certainly a person eligible for liberation. In the Varnashram institution, the fourth stage of life, namely the renounced order, otherwise known as sannyas, is a painstaking situation. But one who is serious about making his life perfect surely adopts the sannyas order of life in spite of all difficulties. The difficulties usually arise from having to sever family relationships to give up the connection of wife and children. But if anyone is able to tolerate such difficulties, surely his path to spiritual realization is complete. Similarly, in Arjuna's discharge of duties as a Kshatriya, he is advised to persevere, even if it is difficult to fight with his family members or similarly beloved persons. Lord Chaitanya took sannyas at the age of 24, and his dependents, young wife as well as old mother, had no one else to look after them. Yet for a higher cause he took sannyas and was steady in the discharge of higher duties. That is the way of achieving liberation from material bondage. So these two verses are acknowledging the fact that there's no escaping happiness and distress in the material world. And in life, there's a bit of both, and it's fleeting. We know that happiness is not something in the material world that is experienced like forever, because always something surely will come to cause trouble or distress, or, some kind of suffering. So that's acknowledged. Now, how you respond to happiness and distress is what is talked about here in such a way so that as you, I guess, don't become so attached to happiness in so much as that when it's due to end, you will then become so distressed that it will be more difficult to carry on in a steady nature. And that's what it's recommended here, is being steadfast. And so what my Gurudev used to say was, he used the word equanimity. So in the face of happiness and distress, remaining in equanimity. So it is just, a way of maintaining a steadfast nature. So also recognizing that even those things that make us feel happy tend to be just sense happiness, sense gratification, and as opposed to happiness that is based in an eternal sense, which I'm not sure is possible in the material world. That's what liberation is. Liberation is being released. The soul is released from the cycle of birth and death in the material world, having to, go through this up and down roller coaster of happiness and distress, in order that we have an eternal relationship and experience, the true nature of the soul, which is Sat Chit Ananda, eternity, knowledge, and bliss. That's the nature of the soul. And so that's what we hope to achieve. Okay, I think I'll just stop there. Oh, actually what I wanted to do was share some of these paintings that are in here. So I'll start from the beginning, I guess, up until where we're at. So here's a picture of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupad. This next picture is Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the spiritual master of Swami Prabhupada. And the next picture is, or painting, Srila Gorkishore Das Babaji Maharaj, the spiritual master of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami and intimate student of Srila Thakur Bhaktivedanta. So this is what's called a disciplic succession. The author of this book, his spiritual master, and here is Srila Thakur Bhaktivedanta, the pioneer of the program to benedict the entire world with Krishna consciousness. And so then the next painting is Dhritarashtra Inquires from Sanjaya about the events of the battle. So you can see the blind king who has asked Sanjaya, who was given the gift of inner sight so that he can relate the information from the battlefield to Dhritarashtra. So notice in the painting, it's depicted on his heart what is happening on the battlefield. Okay, this next painting, "Oh, my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu." So I don't know if you remember, but early in the Gita, when before Arjuna entered the battlefield, the Kauravas were assessing the situation of who they were up against. And then we have Krishna and Arjuna in the midst of the two armies. So here's the chariot. Krishna is driving with Arjuna. And this painting is Krishna and Arjuna sounded their transcendental conch shells. So here's a painting of Krishna and Arjuna is there as well, blowing their conch shells. And the next painting is when Arjuna saw all different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion. Distressed, not knowing what to do. He didn't want to fight. So then we have the insulting of Draupadi. So this is actually a precursor event to this battle. And the Blessed Lord said, "The wise lament neither for the living nor the dead." So as we can see here, some of the types of suffering that we experience, it may be, physical injury, sickness, death, old age. And then I showed you this one yesterday, but then this one also says the body changes, but the soul remains the same. That I think that we can kind of all attest to. All right, so I'll save these for when we get to reading those parts. Okay, so I'll finish there, a short one today. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great day. Aloha, Hare Krishna.